let's get into House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 6. It was titled Smallfolk. We learned at the end of, and as always, spoilers on these. I'm not going to do a full recap. We're trying to do more vibes on these reviews now. And so we got at the end of last episode that Jace was talking to Rhaenyra about, hey, maybe people who aren't direct descendants, like they're not in our family, they still have some Targaryen blood in them. We need more dragon riders. Maybe we give people a chance to see what they got in them. And so that's where we're setting up and going into this episode with. And one thing I want to call out, because I called it out last week's episode, the opening credits, we do get some of Rook's Rest in the tapestry. So the tapestry has been updated. We have some of those pivotal moments now. And then we're getting into the episode. And so to start out this episode, we have the Lannisters, which must be his twin brother. I don't remember if we called that out at all. But Lannister, his brothers in the small council, he's marching to the tooth. And he said that they're ready to head for Harrenhal. But hey, we're not going to march until Aemond comes and joins us with Vhagar. We need that dragon. We need him here. And they get Aemond. He's with his small council. And he's freaking out at the Lannister on his council. I don't remember these names. They're Lannister sounding names. And he's freaking out saying, you can't summon me. Basically, right now, I'm ruling as king. I'm the man. I'm the shit. You can't tell me what to do. You can't call me out to do this. I am not summoned. I do what I want, essentially. And he's trying to talk his council into making peace with the Triarchy, who are just not to be trusted. And they said they're pirates, ravagers. He's like, we need them to help us take out the blockade. I've had about enough of the sea snake. And they're like, hey, that's like trading a rattlesnake for a viper, essentially. I don't remember what analogy they use, but they're like, you don't want to invite those people into, basically, you don't want to invite them into our bed. These people are dangerous. Why are we going to make peace with them? That is not the right move. And this whole council, Aemon's just basically kind of being a bit C-wordy. I got tired of having to bleep that out in last week's episode, so we're going C-wordy here. And so he's shooting down Cole, he's shooting down all of his advisors, kind of showing that he doesn't really care what they think. He has in his mind what he thinks is best, and that's what he's going to go with. He's ruling as king now. He doesn't care what his advisors say. Although we never did officially make the push in saying you have to contact the Triarchy, that I can remember. And so he's not completely unreasonable. He's open a little bit there. And so this whole council meeting ends with he's telling Alicent, because she's kind of standing up and arguing with him a little bit during the council. And he basically says, hey, now that I'm here, like Aegon saw a need in you, like, why are you here? What do you do? And she's like, well, I basically served when your father was dying. I counseled Aegon. He's like, yeah, but what do you actually do? I don't need you here. Go away. Kicks her off the council. And in the after credits, Ryan Condal was talking a little bit about it, the showrunner, and he's saying that Aemond at this, he didn't view it as Aemond really being cruel towards Alicent, which isn't necessarily how it came across to me. It came off as he's like, I know best. I don't need anyone. But Ryan Condal was saying it's more like Aemond's a pragmatist. He doesn't see what value she adds. And if something doesn't add value, he wants it gone, which I could see a little bit, but I felt like there was a little bit of him getting some pleasure in kicking people out. Oh, one other thing I want to say with this, dude, book readers need to calm the fuck down on social media. Like, I get it. The book has been out for a while. If I wanted to read it, I could have. But the show is its own thing. I don't need book readers spoiling everything that happens in future episodes. Like, don't be dicks, people. Come on. I don't need you to tell me that XYZ happens in the books eventually. So, don't get too attached to that character because of this. Why? Why can't you just let people enjoy stuff? Don't fucking ruin things for people. Don't be assholes. So that's my main message and takeaway for you. Don't be assholes. But Aemond as well. You can tell he's kind of eager to fight Daemon. He's like, hey, I'll ride out when the time's right. I'm not scared of my uncle. I look forward to the challenge. And that was another thing that was said after the credits when the director and Ryan Condal were talking that Aemond's a little bit obsessed with Daemon. He views him as a rival. And with Aemon too, one thing you see in him is that he won't be puppeted like Aegon was. Like Aegon was easily swayed by both Larys, not really Alicent, and he just stood up to Otto, but Kristen Cole and even Aemond a little bit. Aegon wasn't as strong-willed and smart as Aemond is. Aemond is very cunning and conniving, and he is tactical. Even though he is rash at times, he is tactical, and he does have a plan going on. And I can't remember if this happens now or a little bit later, because another thing, Aemon sends Cole away. He's like, nope, you need to go start marching on Harrenhal. We have to get him from both sides. You better leave now. It's a little bit of a march. And then we get another moment with Alicent and Gwaine as Cole's about to ride off again. And they talk about Darren, Alicent's youngest son, who I completely forgot she had a youngest son that was out at Old Town, I believe is where Darren's at, where Gwaine was from. And she's asking Gwaine about him, says he stopped riding. Find out he's 16, his dragon's taken flight, and that he has empathy. Like, he is very kind. And Alicent starts saying, like, oh, well, that's something my other sons didn't get here in King's Landing. It's a good thing I sent him away. Maybe it was because of me. Kind of blaming herself. And I think that's one thing we've seen Alicent over the course of this season, especially. She's been a lot more reflective about how her children are acting and behaving and how she may have failed them. And kind of turning a lot of that blame inward and what she could have done better. But we go back to Rhaenyra and her council here, and Corlys shows up to her council, and he puts his little hand pin on. He's accepted her nomination to be Hand of the Queen and wants to assist her. And Rhaenyra calls in Sir Darklyn, who we met in some of the earlier episodes. He was the one that kind of accompanied Rhaenyra to King's Landing when she went to go meet with Alicent and try to broker her peace. When he came back and found out that the Darklyns, that his father had been beheaded by Kristen Cole and their armies when they were marching. And Rhaenyra tells him, hey, we traced your grandmother's grandmother was a Targaryen princess. So congratulations. We want you to try to bond with Seasmoke. He's been lonely off there since Laenor died, which he's not dead that we know in the show. He was off with his lover. They faked his death so that he could go be happy and wasn't going to get murdered. And so Seasmoke is lonely. We need to get someone to bond with him. You could die, but let's give her a try. And Sir Darklyn's all about it. He's like, I'm honored. Dragons are God. Let's do this thing. And I'm not doing it in chronological how it happens in the show, but we get Sir Darklyn trying to bond with Seasmoke and approaching him, and you have the dragon handlers speaking High Valyrian, trying to like kind of calm Seasmoke and have him ready for Sir Darklyn to get on. And Seasmoke goes down, like, you know, let Darklyn mount him. And Darklyn's speaking, like, telling him to calm in High Valyrian. Good on Darklyn for knowing a little bit of High Valyrian commands. And he's like, I've actually done it. And then Seasmoke just pulls up and just fucking torches his ass. Just burns him, burns one of the handlers, and the handler who's burning in the dragonfire just takes out his knife and just slits his throat. He's like, yeah, I'm not gonna fucking burn to death. I'm making it quick and painless. Well, as painless as it can be at that point. And Darklyn's burning there, and Jace ushers Rhaenyra away, and Rhaenyra is very defeated in this moment, and she's kind of approached and played to by one of the councilmen, by Lord Bartimos. We find out later his name was, maybe it was said before, but the old white guy who's bitchy. And he's saying, like, Seasmoke has now fled Dragonstone. We lost Sir Stefan, and basically bitching about, why do we waste this? Why do we make this risk? And Rhaenyra just turns around and bitch slaps him, which is just a boss ass move. And she says, well, you know what? It's my fault, I think, that you have forgotten to fear me. And I thought that was such a badass line. And there were so many of those here. It was like, this is just a gangster line. She just wasn't afraid, just slapped him in front of the servants and other people there and kind of put him in his place. Like, you are forgetting who I am. You serve on my council. I am the queen. You still need to fear me, and you should not be able to just speak out openly like you are attempting to. And I thought that was awesome. Great moment. We also had in this more Daemon Harrenhal visions. So we have him confronting Viserys on the Iron Throne and having some dialogue there. And it's the whole scene about, I'm just all over the board with my notes here. It's the whole scene about when Viserys kind of sends him away after hearing Daemon say heir for a day and that whole thing. And Viserys sends him away and says, no, you'll never be my heir, and I'm going to choose a new heir. And then Simon Strong kind of wakes Daemon up. And I'm a big Simon Strong fan. I'm all for him. He's kind of puts Daemon in his place last episode with the, well, you call him a king consort, not just a king, because Daemon's wanting to be called your grace and just kind of power tripping here and a little bit trying to usurp Rhaenyra, as we've talked about on previous weeks. And so we're having Daemon kind of with these visions, he's kind of learning more about himself, and he's having to revisit these things that just filled him with anger before. And when you're seeing him in these visions, they're almost filling him more with fear and sadness, not just because he's having to revisit it, but just seeing it in a new light and what kind of is coming towards him in those moments. And we get another one later in the episode when he sees Viserys just in grief when I believe it was Viserys' wife, but there is a chance that it was Viserys and Daemon's mom. But that Viserys is just in sadness and grieving the death, and you see Daemon grieve with him and being there in the moment. But after this first vision, Daemon goes to storm out after he confronts Sir Simon Strong about things. And it looks like he's just running away, and he's going to go get on Caraxes and fly off, with which you can tell Caraxes is like, why the fuck am I just sitting here? Like, we're not doing anything. I'm just sitting here. I'm waiting. And Daemon and Alice Rivers have a bit of a conversation here. And Alice Rivers is kind of pushing his buttons a little bit and confronting him about, you're just running away. That's what you do. Things get hard. And she had some great lines here. She tells him, she's like, you are not the player. You are just a piece on the board. Kind of Daemon views himself just as this big, better than everyone else, someone who has the game and he knows what he's doing. He's the one making the moves and he's the one in charge. She's like, you are just another player. You are just another piece on the board. I thought that was fantastic. Kind of reframing things in Daemon's mind and putting him in his place, as he's seeming weaker in this episode than we have seen him before. Right? He's a little bit broken from these visions that he's having. And Alice is just calling him out on his bullshit in it. And then she also tells him that she's like, Viserys didn't want that crown either. The crown is not a prize to be won. It's a burden to bear, which is something that's pretty constant throughout Game of Thrones that you get. They're constantly battling for the Iron Throne and to wear the crown. And then once they get it, no one is happy with it. No one really wants to be king. It also always just brings upon him like more destruction, almost like a curse. What happens to people when they wear that crown. And Alice calls him out on that. And she also tells Daemon kind of cryptically, like, hey, do nothing now. In 3 days, the winds will shift. And so, something's going to happen, but we're like, does Alice really know what's going on here? Let's see. We had some times when Corlys is talking to Alan, who is his bastard that Rhaenys confronted last week's episode. Nope, 2 weeks ago. Rhaenys was dead last week's episode. So 2 weeks ago, and Alan had saved Corlys's life. Corlys is talking to Alan, tells him he wants him to sail as his first mate. Alan kind of resists it, says he's not worthy. There's other people who are more worthy of this honor. And Corlys tells him, I was younger than you when I took my first command. And because my brain operates in musical theater terms and is kind of ruined by that, what I instantly heard was George Washington from Hamilton, where he says, I was younger than you are now when I was given my first command. Almost word for word. It just chef's kiss. Beautiful. There that we get. I'm glad we were able to bring House of the Dragon to connect with musical theater, just like everyone's always wanted. And so that's what I heard in that moment, and that's where my brain went. And Corliss is trying to talk Alan into this. He's trying to give him an honor, and he's like, you should not squander it. And you have Adam over there sitting. So Adam, if you haven't connected, which obviously very Westerosi name, Adam is sitting there just doing his thing. He's got his buckets, his nets. I forget what exactly he's doing. Chill things that he's right there and witnessing all this and kind of shaking his head. And later in the episode, we get a conversation with Alan and Adam where Alan's shaving his head because he's got his white hair coming through that would basically expose him as Corliss's bastard, which Corliss obviously knows. But he doesn't want others to know. He doesn't want people to think that he hasn't gotten to his place by earning it, that he's just being given it, which is fair. I get that. And during this conversation, Adam also says, it's never explicitly been stated before this that Adam is also Corliss's bastard. It's been heavily implied. But in this, Adam is asking, like, why do you not embrace it? Why do you not let your hair grow? And Alan's kind of explaining, like, I don't want them to think that I falsely got this. And I was like, at least he acknowledges you. Basically jealous of the attention, the acknowledgement that Alan's getting, because it seems like Corliss doesn't even recognize or acknowledge that he exists. And Alan's even saying, like, he's never going to recognize us as his sons. So that's where we get the firm confirmation that Corliss is also Adam's father as well. And then we do cut to Ulf in King's Landing, who we're introduced to. He's at a tavern and he overhears someone talking about how the people in King's Landing up there, they're still feasting and feeding their dragons, sheep. Meanwhile, all the small folk, they're starving. And so we're kind of just doing a hop and a jump to everyone who could potentially be a dragon rider in this, everyone who has Targaryen blood. And we get Mysaria revealing to Rhaenyra, like, she's putting the wheels in motion. She's getting the small folk to start muttering and start their discontent with the Greens. Which, another thing, it just looks wrong seeing the Targaryen sigil on a green background. So, like, the green and gold that Team Green, Alicent and her family, are using for the Targaryen logo is just wild. Not a fan of that. It seems weird seeing it. And then we get Larys and Aemon talking some. Larys talking about the need talking about the people starting to rumble, starting to be discontent, and also that, hey, by the way, you haven't named a hand yet. It's kind of important that you get that. I think you should have someone who's wise. And Aemon's seeing right through it. He's like, I've never cared for, like, the side speak of what you're doing, but see that it's done. And Larys, it's just a great moment. He's like, oh, I never thought you'd mean me in a million years, but if that's what you want. And Aemon's just like, not you buffoon. I don't remember if that's exactly what it says, but that's the sentiment that he's giving. He's like, contact Otto Hightower. I want him back here as my hand of the king. You just see the other person on the small council just smirking because he could see just right through Larys as well, because Larys isn't being subtle. And I mentioned it in a previous recap. I don't like that we're trying to make Larys a little bit sympathetic this season. We're just forgetting that he's, again, I don't yuck anyone's yum. We don't kink shame here on the podcast, but he is a little bit of a creepy pervert, and we're just forgetting all of that this season. And I am slightly disappointed in that. But you have, when they're at this council, and right after Aemon tells Larys to get Otto, the Maester comes in and says that Aegon's woken up. And we just get what I felt like was a little unnecessary view of them unwrapping Aemon's bandages and taking what looks off like romaine leaves of lettuce, just pulling it out from his oozing wounds. I didn't need to see that. And Aemon's comes in and is a bit intimidating of Aegon. and basically asking him what he remembers of it. And Aegon just, I don't know if he actually doesn't remember or if he's just not as dumb as we think he is. He's like, nothing. I remember nothing of it. And Aegon's like, well, you tried to fight Meleese. Basically, dumb call. This is what you get for it. And Aegon again is like reiterating, he remembers nothing. I remember nothing. Then we go to Rhaena. She's got Rhaenyra's youngest. She's with at the Eyrie with Lady Jane. She's walking through the fields as she comes across just a torched path, and we have skeletons, which is obviously done by a dragon. And Rhaena confronts Lady Jane. She's like, "You do have a larger dragon here. You were trying to get one sent here, but it looks like you already have one. Why? Why are you hiding this?" And Lady Jane's like, "It's wild. It's not claimed. It's here. You're right, but I have good news. They're ready. Pentos said they would accept you guys. You're ready to head off that way." And we get some thoughts with Rhaena. You can see the wheels are turning in her head because she hasn't been able to claim a dragon yet, right? And so you can see the wheels turning, and I think she's seeing this as an opportunity. This may be a dragon that she could claim for her own, because we have I believe it's young Joffrey of Rhaenyra's sons, which I hate the name Joffrey. You can't make that a sympathetic character in this show now. We hate Joffrey. It's what we do. But he's playing with a very adorable little baby dragon that's about the size of a dog, so couldn't do much, but we do remember from early Game of Thrones, baby dragons are cute. It is what it is. We also have now, we're back in Dragonstone, and Mysaria is talking to Rhaenyra, letting her know that, well, Jace is trying to tell Rhaenyra, like, hey, you need Daemon. You should get Daemon. And Rhaenyra is just fucking sick of people telling her she needs Daemon. She's like, I do not need him. I can be my own. I'm doing this with my hand a lot, and I don't like it. I feel like I should be talking like this. It's totally wrong. That's a very bad Trump impression, but I don't know why I keep doing this. I was at a work conference last week, and for some reason I kept doing like hang loose to people. I was doing that, or when I saw them across, like that. I don't know why. Because I'm awkward. I'm weird. I'm dumb. But Rhaenyra and Jace kind of get into it a little bit about needing Daemon, and she kind of snaps at him. And Mysaria just pops up, and you can tell Jace is kind of frustrated with the interruption and everything. And Mysaria's like, "Hey, your gift is sent." And then you're like, "What are they talking about?" Which, I mean, they're kind of telling him we knew what was happening. And she is sending boats of food to the Smallfolk with her banner on them. And you just see multiple like longboats just come ashore, just filled with fruits, vegetables, bread, grain, all sorts of just stores and provisions for the people, the small folk in King's Landing, who have just been neglected completely because of the blockades. Like, yeah, Rhaenyra's technically keeping them from getting food with the blockades, but that's not what the small folk see. They see those in their tower, the king, the dragons, everyone still feasting, still having a grand old time. Meanwhile, they're starving and they're running out the market. We have Hugh's wife, who is the random guy who is a bastard, we're assuming, because he has whitish hair while looking young. And they had a sick child in one of the previous episodes that they run out of food, and so she can't get anything to bring home to eat. And then we have Hugh. He is seeing people running from the shore with just all these stores and provisions, and they say they got it from Rhaenyra's ships. And they're like, people are like, she thinks of us even now. She's sending us food. Whoopee. Hugh goes, he decks someone and just steals the food from them, which is a little bit of a dick move. I don't know if he just couldn't make it all the way to the shore, if he was assuming it was gone, but you don't need to steal from someone else. I get you want your family to eat, but don't be a dick, dude. And he takes food, and you see guards going, kind of trying to put a stop to it. And there is a scene where Alicent is talking to the Maester, and she's asking about the letters she's tried to send to her father, to Otto. She's like, there's been no response from Highgarden or Old Town. I'm not sure quite where he is, but I haven't had any responses yet. And the Maester says, yeah, there hasn't been any responses, but there is war in the Reach now. So maybe they're having trouble getting out. Maybe he's in hiding. We don't know. That's kind of what's implied there. After we have all the people kind of clamoring, getting Rhaenyra's food, you see Alicent and Rhaenyra are in the Sept. They're trying to pray, and then their Kingsguard's like, "Hey, we got to go now." And you see that the people are just mobbing, kind of clamoring around there and cheering for Rhaenyra. They're looking like "Long live Rhaenyra." They're mad at the Greens, and they start pelting. Allison gets hit in the face with fish, just like fish cuts there, which is a little bit wild. But just this angry mob is just trying to attack them, and one grabs onto Allison's arm, and the Kingsguard just takes his sword out and fucking chops his arm off there. You just see it fall to the ground, and then they just start getting swarmed and mobbed even more. And Allison's trying to protect Helena. The Kingsguard are getting just overwhelmed, and they get them to the carriage, and they're just getting swarmed by people yelling, "Long live Rhaenyra," and cheering for her. And then they barely escape, and it is just a wild scene, and they're just getting mobbed. And we've seen multiple scenes now of Alicent and Helena. I don't know if I said Helena. I may have said a different name with her. But they're just being overwhelmed by the crowds of the Smallfolk. Now, before, it was in a more sympathetic way when they're at Jaehaerys' funeral procession. But now it is just this angry mob, right? Because they're seeing Rhaenyra is trying to be merciful and giving them food. And Alicent and the Greens and all of them kind of withholding from them. And we get this scene next of Larys visiting Aegon in his bed and having a whole discussion with him basically about his life as a cripple and what he's been like and how people view you differently, and they'll stare, but they're going to underestimate you, and you need to use that to your advantage, which I feel like he doesn't quite have it the same as Aegon, because he just has a gimpy ass foot, and that he walks a little bit funny. And Aegon is going to be seriously fucking deformed and just burnt and looking completely different at this point. So not quite the same. But he also tells Aegon, like, you need to take this to your advantage, that people are going to underestimate you. But also, Aemond rules now, and since he's ruling, your life is in danger, because he's not going to want to give this up. And he's like, but I think you knew that. And Aegon kind of cries and asks Larys to help him. And so you have this kind of bond that I think Larys and Aegon are going to form. Now, the condition Aegon's in does not seem like he will be getting up and doing anything anytime soon. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's only 2 episodes left in this. For some reason, I thought it was a 10-episode season. It's an 8-episode season. This was episode 6. We have 2 more after this. We have another, I mentioned it earlier about Daemon's vision with Viserys as well. But Sir Strong wakes him up from this and tells him Sir Grover Tully is dead, because they've been going back and forth against, like, hey, you're not getting these other houses behind you unless you get the Tullys, unless you get their liege lord of the Riverlands to back you. But Sir Strong tells him Sir Grover is dead. Oscar Tully, the little kid that visited him many episodes ago, is now Lord of the Riverlands. Daemon's like, how'd he pass though? And Sir Strong's like, he was old, and none of their healers were able to do things. We even sent our own healer, Alice Rivers. She plied her craft there, but there was nothing more to be done. And when she left, he was dead. And Daemon kind of smiles, like, this is what Alice was talking about. Like, you just need to wait 3 days' time. He can kind of tell she had a little bit of hand in this to turn the tides. We're getting towards the end of the episode now, and we have sea smoke flying around the beach of wherever. I don't know if it's Driftmark or not, but flying around the beaches, and you see Adams there, and sea smoke is flying low and kind of dive bombing them a little bit, doing a little bit of flybys, doing some small Maverick from Top Gun, doing a flyby with the tower, buzzing the tower. That's what Sea Smoke is doing here with Adam on the beach. And Adam's running away because they don't know what this dragon's doing. If the dragon's going to attack him, what's going on? Adam thinks he's escaped. All of a sudden, Sea Smoke lands in front of him and just puts his head towards him. And we don't know what's going to happen, but we know what's going to happen. And then we cut to Rhaenyra and Mysaria having a conversation. And Rhaenyra's telling her, she's like, man, even my son thinks I need Daemon by my side. And she's reminiscing about Daemon a little bit, kind of fondly. She's like, he was everything that I wanted to be. He's carefree and dangerous, and he was a man. And that's what people said that I was lacking to be ruler. He was all these things. And then I was my father's heir. And I had all these things. That was everything that Daemon wanted to be. So they were two halves of a whole, and where she's just fearing and kind of experiencing a little bit of loss of that. She's fearing he may have turned against her. And Mysaria just now is pouring her heart out to her, essentially saying, hey, my father abused me. And he got me pregnant and then attempted to kill me and cut the child out, so I can't bear kids anymore. This is what I've gone through. This was my trauma, and after that, I felt like I would never trust again, because how I was treated. And she's like, but now, Rhaenyra, I view you as steadfast. There was nothing else I viewed as steadfast. Everything else was kind of just temporary and fleeting and not true. But Rhaenyra, I view you as steadfast, and I'm going to serve you because how you treated me, and I believe in you and who you are, and I believe you are meant to be queen. And Rhaenyra just embraces her, and then they start making out. And they have had a bond and a connection, and we've seen that grow, and we see her starting to trust Mysaria more, and you can see Mysaria supporting her. Look, this wasn't in the books. I don't know what it is going to add to the story. I have a feeling from what I had seen in interviews, they were talking about this moment and how when they created that, it ended in the embrace. And Emma Darcy, who plays Rhaenyra, when they were filming, suggested that it ends in a kiss, that's kind of what it culminated at. And so that's what they got. But what that kind of tells me is I feel like they don't have plans for this relationship to go anywhere, that it was almost like in this moment of sharing and compassion and trust and caring, that's kind of how their emotions bubbled over. But if it doesn't further the plot and it doesn't get anywhere else than that, I don't see what the point is with it. I'll give the writers the benefit of the doubt and see what happens, but it didn't do anything for me in this moment. I felt like it a little bit not takes away, but they were just two powerful women who were just having these moments and kind of reflecting on some of their trauma, because all the stuff that Daemon put Rhaenyra through when she was young, her uncle's doing all this, kind of creepy. I know there's the world of incest, but still, she was essentially groomed a little bit and taken advantage of by her uncle, even though she was just using him a little bit as well too, and just seeing this power in him. But I don't know. Their kiss gets interrupted by one of the guards that tells them that sea smoke has been seen flying over Spicetown with a rider. They speculate it could be the Greens because they don't know who else it could be. And Rhaenyra storms out and flies out with Syrax, and that is how the episode ends. And then we get a preview for next week's episode, the penultimate episode of season 2, and it looks like we're going to be in for a good one. So that does it. That wraps up the episode Smallfolk, season 2, episode 6 of House of the Dragon. I thought this was another well-written episode. I really like where we're getting to. I will be interested to see how this season, the culmination of this season, what it all gets to and where we're leaving these characters at the end there. Because I feel like we've been building to some pretty massive confrontations and scenes. And not knowing the story, it'll be interesting to see if we get some resolutions to those in season 2 or if we're waiting until season 3 on that. But I thought this was great. One of the better episodes of the season. This cast continues to crush it. I am just kind of overdone. I'm just kind of over the toxic fandoms online in general with media. It is just exhausting. And people just can't let people enjoy things and let them experience for what it is. But there was another great episode of House of the Dragon. I don't have much more to add. That's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this recap. We got 2 more weeks of House of the Dragon recaps.